Even though the older Galaxy Z Flip had a really tiny and practically useless cover display, it had something going for it. The fact that it had to be unfolded before it could be used created a small barrier that could be just enough to keep people from using their phones unless necessary. For the sake of digital health, this could actually be useful for a lot of users since many people nowadays tend to spend a bit too much time on their phones. The Z Flip3 eventually increased the size of the cover screen to make it actually useful, but it did so in a way that still helped prevent impulsive usage since it was still too small to use actual apps. But with the new Motorola RAZR Plus and the upcoming Galaxy Z Flip5 adopting even bigger cover screens and let people use their apps without having to open the phone first, I think it's time to ask the question, are cover screens getting too big? I mentioned earlier that these small cover screens on the earlier flip phones helped some people limit the amount of time that they spent on them, and there's good reason for this. Cover screens don't usually have a lot of features attached to them. Typically, they have features like clocks and the ability to take phone calls, digital payments, widgets, notifications, cameras, and some quick settings like your flashlight, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, your ringer mode, etc. In other words, they can only do the bare essentials, but you can do all of this without needing to open the phone in the first place. Social media has created this major issue where people check their phones very often for notifications, new posts, etc., and almost too often. This ends up in people intending to spend seconds checking, but in the end, they end up spending several minutes or even hours scrolling through their feeds. Not only does the physical act of having to unfold the phone discourage people from using it impulsively, but the usefulness of a cover screen eliminates all kinds of reasons for wanting to unfold the phone in the first place, since you can just do it from the cover screen. This is one of the biggest benefits that's been reiterated by many reviewers over the years, and it remains one of the biggest selling points of a phone like this. But even though small screens have proven useful in this regard, their biggest upside is also their biggest downside. Small screens limit usage, and they have proven useful in some regards, that's definitely true, but they're just not as useful as people would like. They show the time and notifications, and let users change some settings, but that's about it. I've seen so many people voice their concerns about the size of cover displays and how they wish they could actually just use their phone without having to open it first. But isn't that why flip phones were useful in the first place? Why are people clamoring for bigger cover displays when that would just kind of ruin the point of a small one? Simple. Folding phones. One of the hallmark features of a full-size folding phone is that it's a tablet when you need it and a quote-unquote regular-size phone when you don't. In other words, the cover display on a phone like this is the size of a typical smartphone, which means that it's still useful when it's closed. Flip phones just don't have this level of capability when folded, and full-size folding phones are just beyond most people's budget. A lot of people seem to see the potential of flip phones as folding phone alternatives, and they're often looked at as the more interesting and affordable option. So for most people, a bigger cover screen on smaller phones like these would just be so much more useful. All that being said, I wouldn't say cover screens are quote-unquote too big. Rather, I think that flip phones are just starting to find their place. Small cover screens made flip phones the ones to buy if you wanted to use your phone less, but I don't think they're ever really made with this intention. Bigger folding phones are with the option for deeper pocketed people who wanted to up their productivity game, but most people don't have pockets deep enough to afford one, and that's where quote-unquote modern flip phones come into play. They create a proper midpoint between older flip phones and full-size folding phones. The phone may not have the full productivity capabilities of a full-size folding phone, but just like how they're basically small tablets that can be used like a phone, flip phones are becoming big phones you can use just like a tiny one. Not everything you need to do needs to be done on a large screen, and the tiny screen can discourage people from impulsively using apps where large screens would benefit them more, for example, YouTube. So even though cover screens are getting bigger, they can still accomplish their intended purpose while also providing more utility. Flip phones have always been the more interesting version of a folding phone, and with cover screens becoming more useful, they could end up becoming the standard option for anyone considering switching away from traditional smartphones. Here's my question for you guys this week. Do you prefer small cover screens or big ones? Should flip phones be capable of running full Android apps, or should there be some limitations to help encourage moderation? Leave a comment, let me know your thoughts. Anyway, just wanted to share that with you guys. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you all around. Adios!